Thank you for everyone who's joined. Yeah, no, really appreciate you all joining for our first retail user group ever. So it's quite an occasion. Really excited. We've got some fantastic speaker lineup today with Michail Karnas joining us from Tesco and our very own George Gray with some interesting content around transformation in retail in COVID-19 times. So to briefly introduce myself, I'm on screen now, waving. I'm hoping you guys can see me. But my name is Nick Thomas. I'm an account director for the retail industry here at Tableau. I've been working in software for about 15 odd years now, and I've been with Tableau for just over 9 months. A bit of a fun fact about me, I'm a Brit who was born in Switzerland, and due to moving around Europe quite a bit, I speak fluent Spanish. In fact, it's my first language. I moved to the UK in '98 from the United States, where I had a very broad Midwest American accent. So just in the event anyone on the call picks up a bit of a twang, and I know what you may all be thinking, I sound very confused, I really am. With that, I'll introduce you to Becky as well. Becky?
Yeah, hi, thanks so much, Nick. So I'm Becky, I'm an account executive at Tableau. I've been working here for nearly 4 years across a range of different industries, but I'm now focusing on supporting and enabling those specifically within the retail sector. So retail and shopping have always been a particular passion and interest of mine, more so on kind of spending habits around, as I say, fashion. However, my circumstances have recently changed. An interesting fact about me is we now have a new puppy. So I'm spending more time now with my online on kind of chew toys and pet supplies, and less on dressing myself, should I say. But yeah, really excited to be sitting on the session today and be part of the group.
Can we see the puppy, Becky? Is he or she around?
You can. 1 second. Actually, just here. See her?
Ah, very, very
dog
cute.
lovers out there.
Very cute. I'm sure there will be many on the call. Cool. Well, thanks for that, Becky. So, guys, just before we kick off, few housekeeping rules. The session will be recorded. Unfortunately, for sensitivity issues, we won't be recording the Tesco piece, but a copy of the slides will be presented after today on the Tableau community forums. It sounds silly, and I don't even know why I'm saying this, but if you have difficulty hearing, please turn up your volume. But I think that there is an option to use the WebEx toll-free numbers as well. So you have dial options on WebEx. If you want to submit a question, which we really encourage it, the session's around you as a community, and we're trying to foster that community. So there is a Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. In WebEx, you'll find that there's 3 little dots. If you click on there, you should have a Q&A box. So feel free to ask questions as we go throughout. I think it's a very informal session, guys, and I hope this is going to be the start of many. So it's going to be a relaxed environment. I just wanted to stress that. So before we start, it's probably worth just explaining why this group has come about and what we are trying to do within Tableau and what it effectively means for you moving forward. And I thought I'd start with defining what a Tableau user group is and just kind of carry on from there. So it really is just a collection of Tableau users, enthusiasts or fans that choose to associate with one another in some fashion. And I think that is very typical of Tableau in a way that we foster communities and we create them. And I think, again, the biggest takeaway here is it's a very relaxed environment, and that's what we're trying to foster moving forward for these types of user groups. Now, typically, we have 3 types of user groups at Tableau, one of which is public. So that's based out of cities where customers get together and they connect with others. It's a good way of meeting people. We have user groups inside organizations. So we help set up internal user groups within a company to assist learning and knowledge sharing, as an example. And then last but not least, we have industry user groups, which is effectively what we have today. And it's a virtual online session of users that work in similar areas or markets. Now, the reason I highlight this is because typically we aim to get everyone together. But obviously with a new norm, we're obviously having to set up a virtual session. So we're hoping to try and get this off the ground. But typically, I've been to one myself. Awesome opportunity to see different people talking about different topics. There's free beer, wine, soft drink, your beverage of choice. along with free pizza. So it's a really good way of networking, and I really enjoyed it when I first joined Tableau. Now, the interesting thing about this is that the Tableau user group is actually run by the audience. So everyone else in the audience now is dialed in. It's run by you. It's not run by Tableau. And while we are hosting this initial group, the idea is to really get it off the ground. And while we've got multiple Tableau user groups, we wanted to maybe focus something around retail. Now, taking a step back, you'll notice a common trait in all of the three groups that I mentioned, and it's all around community and helping form them. And I think this is probably one of the most Tableau-related pitches, but it's really what Tableau is all about. So we have over 650,000 active community members. That's immense when you really think about it. And some say, really, really bad Jeremy Clarkson top tier pitch there, but some say it's one of the largest software communities outside of open source. And that's quite impressive. And it really is the heart and soul of forming data cultures, which is a bit of a buzzword out there at the moment. People don't necessarily know what it is, and this is where Tableau helps. But the data culture is typified by all of you guys joining now and sharing a sense of purpose, which is the premise of what today really is all about. And it's not just about software. It's not just about BI being a toolkit. It's how that data is leveraged, used fundamentally to change how a business operates, which in this day and age is more important than ever. So as a follow-up action, guys, what we'd love to see is a continuation of this. We should just be really relaxed, but it's run by you as a network. And we're also calling out for leaders on the call to take on the Olympic torch, as a way to speak, to make this a regular occurrence. And we're obviously here to support that. So if this is something you want to participate in, we'll provide details towards the end of the session. Really encourage it, because we definitely want to get this off the ground. It's a great way of networking. And on that note, without further ado, I wanted to hand over to our first speaker, Michail Karnas from Tesco.
Hello.
Once again, Michail, thank you so much from myself as well. Really insightful. And to everyone who's posted questions in the chat box, we'll make sure that we cover those at the end. We've got plenty of time for Q&A.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michail.
Thanks, guys. So hopefully everybody can now see the slide deck presenting.
You're good to go, George.
Awesome. So what I'm going to talk to you guys around is we're just going to get a feel for some of the changes and some of the impacts that we've seen in some data around the transformation of retail during these COVID-19 times. To do that, we're going to talk through a few slides first of all, but we're going to go in and actually look at some data, look at some Tableau, have a bit of a play. So hopefully that makes sense for everyone. Before we do, introduce myself to you all. So I'm George Gray. I'm a lead solution engineer over here at Tableau. A little bit about me. So there's my semi-professional photo. So I've worked in analytics and visualization for the last 9 years in different companies and working with different solutions and softwares in that time. And I've had a specific focus on the retail sector for the last 3 years. So supporting retail clients in visualization and analytics. Stepping away from the professional side of life, whom I'm stuck in lockdown with. So my wife and my 2 little girls. So they're the ones driving me crazy. 6 weeks, 7 weeks into lockdown. And I can't wait for at the end of lockdown to go on away somewhere sunny and play a bit of golf. So that's a little bit about me. That's where I'm sat. And let's go a little bit more into the content we want to talk about today. So talking about COVID and stepping away and when all of this is hopefully over, we've seen this absolute global pandemic in the last few months, and some of those numbers are very, very hard to deal with. I think it's been over, this data is up to date as of May the 9th. There's over 4 million cases, over 250,000 deaths being impacted by COVID-19. There is a really useful resource. If you go onto Tableau, there's a COVID-19 data hub, and that gives you access to the latest numbers and data that you can get access to. So you can actually take COVID numbers, cases, potentially blend that with your own data. It includes geographies. It includes a huge amount and depth of information. There's also some dashboards on there people have built. So please feel free to go there, access that, potentially take some of that data to blend with your own, to do your own analysis on potential impacts that are being caused. But I think something that's really changed, and even before we focus on our industry, is there's suddenly this new world of everybody talking about data. So this is a visualization you've probably all seen and heard over the last few months. And we've heard the term flatten the curve more than I ever have in my life. There's people that never ever talked about data, and they're talking about numbers and percentages, and they're talking about what's the R rate, what's the infection rate, is it between 0.5 and 0.9? Suddenly people are starting to understand that data is one of the key assets to understanding and to being able to hopefully find responses and find a way out of this crisis. But data is at the fore, and it's something that is being talked about in briefings and talked about all over the globe. So it really does just bring to the fore how important it is to understand the information that we have out there. It's just a little bit of an intro to that. Obviously, we're here and focusing on retail and how that's impacting you, how it's impacting the consumer. So I'm going to go through a few of the challenges that we can see, and then I'm going to go in and show you some data that I've got from the Office of National Statistics. So they've got some data that looks at performance in retail over the last about 30 years, but we'll be focusing obviously on the more recent times. So what are these unprecedented challenges that we're seeing both as customers ourselves and in your customer? So the first of those challenges that we're seeing is there's this fundamental shift in buying behavior. Customers are suddenly needing to, through necessity, through stores being closed as of lockdown on the 23rd of March, there's been this drive of customers going to buying products online. They've had to step away from going to the stores. People who've never had online shopping accounts are now shopping online. They may never have even made a purchase with their card online because of the ways they're used to shopping, and they have had to change that. The way that people have to interact with each other in those stores and the things that people want to buy. As we all saw at the beginning of the crisis, there were huge availability issues, things like toilet roll and pasta. And there are still availability issues. I mean, my little girls love to bake and going and getting flour. But you can maybe get the odd bag of self-raising, but having flour or bread making flour is becoming very difficult to get hold of. There's suddenly a whole new drive to the types of products people are buying and the type of things people are willing to spend their money on. As we know, there's huge economical impact on what has happened. So people are more aware of where they're spending their money and potentially how they're spending it. Also in the volume people are buying, especially if we think more to food retail potentially here, but people are bulk buying products. People are buying huge amounts of something, or they're potentially doing a weekly, fortnightly shop, opposed to thinking about doing a shop for the next 2 or 3 days. All of this is that behavior change that we're seeing in the consumer. Likewise, there's a reset of expectation. People have got so used to being able to have next day, and in some cases in cities, same day delivery. And suddenly there's a different prioritization that has to occur. Suddenly, do we need to make sure the most vulnerable are served first? How do we change that, and how is that dealt with? There's just a few of the challenges. There are obviously many, many more I'm sure you've come across, both as a customer and from your customers. What impact is that having to you and to the retailers? So one of the biggest issues, of course, is the supply chain. And not just the supply chain in the sense of the demand for products and potentially the way that you've sourced and planned for which products to have in and stock demand, but also the delivery. How do you deliver that product? How do you get deliveries of products to stores? How do the warehouses continue to operate when you've got things like social distancing? You've of course also got the real hard time of staff being furloughed and store closures. And that's putting pressure across all areas of the organizations, within analytics teams all the way through to those in the actual shops who've been furloughed. There is a different amount of pressure going throughout the organizations. Likewise, that's driving into things like procurement and fulfillment, being able to fulfill this new demand. The models that have been built aren't built on the current behavior of the customer. How do we change that? Also, how do you deliver? Some of the best responses we've seen are those customers that have a digital transformation in place or are thinking about digital delivery. Actually, what sort of service can you provide to your customers when they're engaging in a digital format, both to your existing loyal online customers, but also to make it comfortable for those who are buying online for the first time? How do you market to people in a time like this? How do you actually start to show and get customers in when the times are as hard and unprecedented as they are? On top of these challenges, there's a real big question that we have to ask. And that question is, will these behaviors continue? Will people who have never shopped online now be online shoppers? Will some of the products that have been in demand continue to be in demand? Will people realize actually they love baking a lot more, and therefore we need to change the way we bring in flour and all of the products related to baking? Again, are these changes permanent, or is this something that we're going to see as a fluctuation that will then drop back to normality in a few hopeful months' time? All of these things are very difficult to obviously give the answer to. One of the best ways to do that is going to be through analytics and through visualization. I think the biggest thing I have seen, and in the data, and the data shows us, is that we have this drive to online. We have people now, and this drive and this desire for people to get things still delivered, to almost feel normal, to do some shopping, but their only method is online. So I'm going to come out of PowerPoint and we'll go into Tableau. It's what we all use. It's what we love to play with. So I'm just going to talk you through a couple of dashboards that I've built. And again, just on the data here. So this is from the Office of National Statistics. They actually sent out a survey, first of all, to businesses across all sectors. And that survey had two key questions in it. What is the current trading status of your business, and what impact has this crisis had on turnover? These are the responses across all the industries. I've obviously highlighted wholesale and retail. That's what we're all focused on here. So that's where the orange line is. We've got some absolute, as you'd expect, sort of lines within this. Apologies, don't want to skip across there, go back. So we have in here, as you may expect to see, things like accommodation and food industries. 80% of those industries have had to pause or temporarily close their businesses. This isn't just closing stores, this is actually cease trading temporarily. So huge impact in accommodation, food, arts, entertainment. But it's still a massive hit within our sector, with almost a 25% of businesses actually having to pause or temporarily close trading. Really, really powerful. And again, it just shows that the impact of this virus and the impact of this pandemic has hit all industries, and it's hit in different ways. I saw a great quote that was, we may all be in the same storm, but we're not all in the same boat. We're all dealing with the storm differently, but we're all trying to make sure our boats get through this. And something just from a cool little visual, maybe something a bit more positive in the sense that I think is really cool in Tableau, is I put a bit of animation onto this visual just for us to have a bit of a look at some of the impact on turnover. So we've got chosen currently to look at normal ranges. So within retail, I can see that actually 18% of businesses have found that financial performance has been unaffected, and 2.6% have also seen that that's within normal range. So about 22% of businesses in retail believe that even with the current pandemic, they're operating as usual. But if we looked at a negative impact of up to 20%, how does that move? And we can see again, we've got our average line here. So the average that we're seeing is 14.5%. So looking at a 20% hit in retail, actually we're below the average, which is good. We don't want to be the other side of that average line. So up to 20%, probably one of the better performing areas. However, when we start to move to that bigger impact to the organization, we see retail start to move beyond that average to this bottom right view. And we're starting to see when financial negative impacts between 20 and 50%, retail's going up to over 20% of businesses are feeling that hit. And then when we go to things like greater than 50% on negative turnover, retail is again on the other side of that line. As we'd expect, this data covers lockdown. This is as a result of businesses having to close stores in the change in behavior. So again, you can see if we look at that average line, 25%, so a quarter effectively, but we're seeing a sort of 35% use here of businesses in retail having greater than 50% negative impact on turnover. This is something that's really, really impacting economically, and it's impacting the way we operate. So let's go and ask some questions of the data. Again, just show some of the cool stuff you can do in Tableau and encourage you to go and have a play with. So ask data. Let's maybe, instead of me showing you a dashboard, let's tackle this as we might typically want to ask a question. So let's have a look at industries that are continuing to trade. And as we type, we get this search. So let's have a look at some of those industries that are currently continuing to trade, get that visual produced within Tableau. So again, as you might expect, professional, scientific and technical activities is the most continuing to operate as normal business area and industry that the Office of National Statistics has captured. And as you would probably expect in a time like this, when it's so important to have that scientific research, it's probably the sort of things you would see. Likewise, things like information and communication and health and social businesses. So those areas that are at the fore of potentially tackling the issues at hand. Stepping away from the survey data, I want to show you and just talk through the actual performance data of retail that the Office of National Statistics captured. So what we have here is data that the ONS has actually captured data going back 30 years. But just looking at some of the performance of all retail types over time with a percent difference month on month, we can see that March, which was the fullest data that we had, which included lockdown, saw the largest drop that we have seen since the ONS has collected this data. So through all the recessions we've had in the last 30 years, all the business impacts, this has hit retail the hardest of any of those areas. This pandemic is causing huge changes and huge performance issues, especially when we start to look at things like the physical store performance. So we can see here that in March, looking at physical stores, there was a negative 13% drop month over month. And that includes, obviously, lockdown came on the 23rd of March. So this does include a couple of weeks of normal trading, as normal as it was, I guess, in the run up to lockdown. But this really showing that this has caused huge performance issues. What it has also shown is when we go and have a look at online retail performance, we actually see a huge increase, one of the largest increases that we've seen in the last 20 years, 10, 15 years, sorry, in online sales. So an 8.29% growth. Again, that includes the partial covering of lockdown. In actual fact, looking at some of the information, online sales in retail now takes 22.3% market share of all business done when we looked at the data at the end of March. That is the highest ever recorded. So as much as we have seen some of the biggest drops, we have also seen the highest recorded drive of customers to online shopping. So let's go into this in a little bit more detail. Let's have a play. Let's do the great side of Tableau. Let's actually come in and do some visual analytics. So let's just go to the worksheet here. And what I'm going to do is let's just have a look at some sectors. Let's break this down a bit more than just how is everything performing. Because as I'm sure, as you would all expect, and as we all have seen, there are certain retailers that have had huge performance during this time when we look at things like food retail. Simply because of this panic buying, people are rushing to the shops, and there's been a huge increase. So if you look in food retail, it's a huge increase month over month. But again, if you look at other sectors like clothing and looking at non-food specialist stores, a lot of those have had to close. Non-store retail is my online stores, so that's just online how they would see performance. But you can typically see, but things like household goods is an interesting one when we break it down. But still, the most fascinating that we have to think about is looking at food retail. Alcoholic drinks has seen the biggest increase in sales of any product. So it's good to know that when we get lemons, the Brits turn to wine. So we literally, what's better to do in lockdown than have a few extra beers in the house so you can get through lockdown. So a real increase in things like alcoholic drink purchases, but that goes across the board within the food store areas. Again, when we look down into things like household goods, things like electrical household appliances saw a real increase. But again, everybody suddenly was aware that they had to work from home. Suddenly people were buying products that they needed to work from home. Suddenly people buying extra monitors, printers, equipment that they never normally thought they would have to buy. So really, I've put this onto Tableau Public. So my Tableau Public profile is on the slide deck, and so this workbook is on Tableau Public with all of the data from the Office of National Statistics. So please do go in, download the workbook, have a play, look at this data yourself, drill into it, have a look at how the performance is impacting your sectors, maybe how it's impacting in comparison to the numbers you're getting. So really do encourage you to go and have a play with this. The final thing I want to talk to you about, just to show you, is something that's really exciting, and that's just the new feature within Tableau 2020.2. I just want to very quickly show you the new data model within Tableau, and very briefly. Some of you may have seen this from the beta program if you've downloaded it, the version for playing within the beta, or you may have seen this talked about if you've been to Tableau Conference 19. This was really talked about. You may have heard the term the noodle if you've been engaged with some of that stuff. But I'm just going to bring in some data. So I'm actually going to bring across a hyperfile I've got, which has got my retail sectors in them. Bring that extract in. And let's just throw an Excel that I've got in here, which is looking at my Office of National Statistics data. And we'll just look at the chain volume retail sales. So drag that over. And we get this connection. And now what you'll notice that is different from how you will have engaged with building the data models out is instead of choosing a join type, all we are now asking is where is the relational join? Where is the relational logic in this data? Both contain date. It's a nice easy field for the logic to pertain to. We now have this concept of both a physical and a logical layer in the data model within Tableau. So really cool stuff here is that you can actually build fact tables. We can join logical tables to those fact tables. We can actually start to think about how we would have a multiple and different combinations of data sources, how we may want to build different schema types out when doing our data here in Tableau. So actually, do we want to do a star or a snowflake style schema? We can now start to build them. But when that's going quite advanced, building some of that out, but also what the new logical layer allows, which is really powerful, is for a user who isn't particularly confident in the type of join they may need, they just need to know where that logic is. Choose the logic, and Tableau will appropriately execute the join to the query that is asked of the data. So now when I go to sheet 1, as you'll all be familiar with, I've not had to do anything now. I've got 2 different data sets. A slight change is you don't have all of your data. It's split by table. So the 2 tables are separate and their data within them. But because there's that logic there, I'm going to use date from my chain volume retail. I'm going to come from my extract here. Let's use my sectors. And then let's go in and let's look at the sales millions. Let's put some color onto that. And again, just so you're aware of the data, by the way, this data is seasonally adjusted and based on current retail prices. So that's why when we have a look at the volumes, they are all fairly similar. But we can actually see we drank a lot more alcohol. It also covers tobacco, so maybe there's a lot more smoking during the sort of 80s and 90s. So this data goes back fairly far. Come down to 2020. Obviously, we've not completed 2020 yet, so let's drop a filter in. Month. Let's choose March because we know we've got the data for lockdown during March. And again, let's scroll down to where we've seen the impact. And just some really cool ways of visualizing the data here. So I can see again the alcohol sales is focused there within the last probably last 10, 12 years. We've not seen alcohol sales like that in March for the last 10, 12 years. So real shows what COVID's driven us all to. But some great patterns and trends to see in the data. This is the Tableau I'm sure you all know and love to use. But again, it's just that new data model. It makes it very easy to bring different data sources in without the thinking of the joins. Also makes things like one-to-many incredibly easier to do. And it's all executed within the new data model. So finally, just going to jump back to our slides. So obviously we have seen this drive to online. The data shows that people are being driven to online shopping to fulfill their needs. And what we're seeing, and I guess our views of this, is the most important way to respond to this crisis within Tableau is visibility. See that data. It's the best way to see what is happening within your organization and also globally with those public data sources that are available. Gain that insight, understand, ask the questions of the data to find out the implications within the organization. Most importantly, do it quickly. This is a landscape that is changing not by the day, but by the hour. So again, be able to operate quickly with that data to gain that insight and visibility and do it in an agile manner. Take actionable insight from your data. As I said at the very beginning, data is king in not only the fight against the virus, but also for the business in operationalizing and starting to reopen and adjust. Talking of reopening and adjusting, there's a great site to go to from Salesforce, so called work.com. It's a really useful resource that's been put out there around helping and guiding businesses to reopening and starting and to bringing the business out of this pandemic and how to work in that. There's Tableau dashboards, there's some advice, demos. It's a really useful site. I would just encourage you to go and have a look and have an explore on that site and see if there's anything valuable for you to consume from that. Finally, as I say, all of the data and dashboard that I've built, that is on Tableau Public. So please feel free to go in, download it, have a play, put your data alongside it, and hopefully together we can make sure that we come out of this positively on the other side. So that's all from me. Thank you guys and stay safe.
Fantastic, George. Thank you for that. Fascinating. Says a lot about the British culture, I think, when we talk about alcohol. So, that was fascinating. So thank you for sharing that. I know myself have purchased quite a bit of alcohol, actually. So it does resonate. What that says about me is a different story. But anyways, moving on. So look, guys, I want to say a big thank you to everyone on the call. My colleague Becky is going to wrap up in a second with follow-ups in terms of what to expect, where to find some of the content. As obviously the whole idea is to generate this this community and allow you guys to take this forward. I did want to revisit some of the questions. So, Michail, I'm going to come back to you because I think there's a few questions here that were aimed at you before we changed tact. So I think one of the questions we had was around Luigi Salazar was asking around data standardization in Cleanse prior to Tableau visualization. So one of his challenges is around consolidation and cleaning and the various different data issues. So how do you manage that in a nutshell, Michail?
So the whole suite is automated. How we manage the preparation is outside the Tableau, actually. So we have an in-house build application builder. So any SQL queries run outside Tableau, for our team at least. We prepare the final data cubes, and then I have written a PowerShell script which pushes the data to Tableau server, and then Tableau run from the extract pretty much. Unfortunately, it won't be a solution that is like readily available. The one we're using, it's one built within the team.
Thanks, Michail. And I think, look, Luigi, on that point, obviously we've got follow-ups here. One thing we obviously look at as well in situations like this is something like Tableau Prep as well. So if you do have questions there that need following up, we do have resources that you can rely on. And by all means, feel free to email this group and ask for advice, because that's the point of the community. One more question before we wrap up with Becky, and then anything that we don't answer, guys, we can maybe post on the forum as a follow-up, if Michail could be so kind.
More than happy, yes.
Fantastic, thank you. So Maris was asking around your data sources. I mean, a business of your size, they must be relatively big, considering the amount of data that you work with. So how do you handle the data source updates? Is it incremental? And are you using something like Tableau data management to support you?
So again, we'll do all the preparation outside Tableau in our team, but as Nick mentions, Tableau preparation is very similar in what you're trying to achieve. So what we do, we have parameters, so all the data is always rolling. So we may want to see the last 6 weeks, it's always rolling. If we want to see 2 years, it's always rolling, and this is very parameter, so they update every day. In terms of getting the right amount of data, we have to make compromises on the level we present the data, so how granular you can get. So in a lot of dashboards that the data is too much, what we do is maybe we have less granularity when we're looking on overview pages on trend lines that we want to go back 2-3 years. But if you want to see what's going on in the last couple of weeks, you may have a different data set that is more granular, but it's only for the last 2 weeks, because people very rarely want to know detail about 3 years ago. It's a very extreme occasion, and from dashboards and from experience I have said before, you almost never get questions like that. So a very good methodology is when you want to do trend lines and long-term trends, use a quite high-level data set, so you have fewer rows of data. When you want to drill down, maybe have this drill down available for the last couple of months, and then you can have more detail on your data set. So it's structured in different levels.
Fantastic. Thank you for that explanation, Michail. And yeah, I'm sure if we've got follow-up questions, we'll take this offline. Guys, I just want to say thank you again for myself. I'm going to hand over to my colleague, Becky, who's going to walk us through RAP. Becky, you on the line? You may be on mute, Becky. Can't hear you.
There you go. Can you hear me now? Okay.
Yeah, you're back online. Over to you.
Perfect. So just really quickly, conscious of time, a couple of next steps and resources from our side. So, I think real focus of the session is, to help kickstart a user group specifically for those individuals working in retail. And so we want to ensure that we're enabling everyone with as many resources that are readily available as possible in terms of awareness. Top one there, we have the e-learning offering at the moment. So we have 90 days free access available to all of the modules covered within the platform. To access that, you have the discount code, but the free access code available if you just go to tableau.com/e-learning. We also have a unique opportunity where people can take advantage of 50% off the desktop specialist certification. Once again, if this investment is made ahead of June 30th, you have 6 months from the day of purchase to actually take the exam, and that discount is automatically applied when you add it to your basket on the website. I'm sure many of you have come across already the COVID-19 Data Hub that's been launched by Tableau, but once again, for those of you that haven't, it's ultimately a fantastic resource that's been created by the community, sharing a number of visualizations around COVID-19. We also have a couple of starter dashboards there that you can leverage, either for your own personal curiosity or to combine with your own business data. There's also the access to the free data set from Johns Hopkins University, tracking cases and deaths, so you can ensure that you're leveraging reliable data there. And in addition, you can also leverage the content that George has shared, which I'm sure you'll all agree is pretty awesome. And finally, just going on to next steps. So we have the next user group scheduled for June 24th. If you are interested in getting involved, I'd recommend you reach out to the user group team at usergroups@tableau.com. And again, just to kind of really re-articulate what Nick said at the beginning, Nick, myself, and George are really excited and passionate about being involved in this group. But the greatest impact for everyone is building that community of those of you who work directly for retail organizations, have your ears close to the ground, and ultimately can help support each other, not just through this time, but ongoing in terms of content and resource. So if you're interested in being a speaker such as Michail, who once again, thank you. If you want to be involved in the planning, suggest content, just feel free to reach out on the email alias here. And then finally, just to wrap things up, a massive, massive thank you to everyone. So particularly to our speakers, but also for all of you for joining today. I hope you found the session impactful. I'm really looking forward to hearing some feedback. And once again, we'll post all the answers to the unanswered questions in the forum, and we'll send that all around on email. So you have all the resource links there as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you all.